The saddle joint allows flexion, extension, adduction, abduction, and circumduction. An example of this is the thumb joint when playing darts, because flexion occurs when holding the dart, and then when throwing and releasing the dart, extension occurs. And if you was playing a spin shot, and then abduction and abduction could happen to make the dart spin. This joint looks like a saddle and has a convex bone and a concave bone that fit into each other to create the movements. Also, because of the way they fit together, it restricts any other movement from happening. If you rock your thumb side to side, it can feel a bit jolty. This is the bones in the joint reaching their maximum movement due to the saddle-like shape. Another way to be able to see what this joint looks like is by putting the space between your thumb and index fingers on top of each other, and to try and move them in different directions. By doing this, you should see that it is impossible to do rotation because the thumb and index fingers should get in the way. Then imagine this as the bone in your thumb. Synovial and cartilage. Synovial and cartilage are the most movable and slightly movable joints, so can do similar movements. This is because the vertebrae can make lots of little movements to make a big one, and the ankle has lots of smaller bones making bigger movements. They also both have cartilage that acts as a shock absorber and prevents friction, whilst ligaments hold the joint together. They are different because synovial joints have synovial fluid, a joint capsule, and tendons, whereas fibrous don't. Fibrous and synovial are similar because they meet at articulating bones to create the joint. They are different because synovial joints have full range of movement, whereas fibrous have no range of movement. Also, fibrous joints don't have synovial fluid, joint capsule, tendons, or ligaments, but synovial do. Fibrous and cartilaginous joints are similar because they both meet at articulating bones that make up the joint. This is where they differ because fibrous have no movement at all, and cartilaginous have limited range of movement. Also, cartilage joints have cartilage to protect and cushion the joint, however, fibrous don't have this. The ball and socket joint is similar to the colonoid joint because they both do movements: extension, flexion, abduction, adduction, and circumduction. Also, they are both two bones that fit into each other. However, they are different because the condynoid doesn't allow rotation, but the ball and socket joint does. This then means that the condynoid can only move along one plane of axis compared to the ball and socket that can move along all planes of axis. This causes the ball and socket joint to have more freedom with movement compared to the wrist that doesn't have as much free range. This differs from the hinge joint that only allows flexion and extension because the bones are formed like a hinge on a door, which allows forward and backwards movements but prevents all other movements due to the shape and structure of the bones, compared to the ball and socket, which allows all movements. The hinge joint is similar to the pivot joint, although they don't allow the same movement. The shape and structure is very similar because if you was to turn the pivot joint on its side, it would create a hinge-like joint. The hinge is a trough-shaped bone with a cylinder-shaped bone inside to create forward and backwards moves, and the pivot is a cylinder-shaped bone inside a ring-shaped bone. Therefore, the shape and structure is very similar, even if their functions are different. The hinge joint is different to a gliding joint because the bones at this joint are short bones gliding over the top of each other, so their shape and structure is different. Also, the movements that they allow is very different because the hinge allows flexion and extension, whereas gliding joints allow inversion and eversion. Pivot is similar to a hinge joint because of the reason stated before. It is different to a ball and socket joint because the pivot joint only allows one movement, and this is a more solid structure so that it doesn't break easily and can support the head, compared to the ball and socket joint, which allows all movements but hasn't got a solid structure, as it can dislocate easily because the ball part of the joint isn't secure in the socket part and has free range within the socket. The colonoid is similar to the ball and socket joint as explained earlier with the ball and socket joint. It is different to the hinge joint because it has less range of movement caused by the locked in place structure it has. Also, because of this, it means that the joint is more stable and can be used for more weight bearing activities. The condynoid joint allows more movement at the joint, however, hasn't got a stable structure, as you can make your wrist really floppy, which means it can't take as much weight on it alone and can break easily. The gliding joint is similar to the saddle joint because they both have bones that are on top of each other to create little movement that can have a big impact on sporting performance. Also, the movements made are smooth at either joint, which is due to the structure of them. The gliding joint is different to the condynoid joint because it can only make small movements due to the small flat cuboid bones that make up the joint. The condynoid joint allows bigger movements and has more space at the joint due to the egg-shaped bone fitting into the cavity of another to be able to do the movements flexion, extension, abduction, adduction, and circumduction. The saddle joint is similar to the gliding joint for the reasons explained above. However, this is different to the hinge joint because the saddle allows more movements. Also, the bone at these joints are attached at their ends, but at the saddle the bones are sat on top of each other. The saddle joint is more likely to break compared to the hinge joint that is more stable.